Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the 2022 Texas Purple Hull Peace Festival.
So it's a cultural, music, regular festivals. We are having singing, and we have contests, which is sort of the highlight. Pea picking first and pea shelling. People love that.
If you like good barbecue rib, it's going to be some around somewhere. We have watermelons, and we have plenty of purple whole peas to sell.
In a field carved out from thick East Texas woods, Newton County Commissioner Phillip White welcomes his neighbors.
It's a pleasure to be here once again. It's a blessing, actually.
The Texas Purple Hull Pea Festival sprouts up for one Saturday every June to celebrate farming, community, and history. And even though its namesake crop has faded in popularity, festival organizer Lareatha Clay's memories are as vivid as those bright purple pods.
My grandmother would call my mother and say the peas are ready. So that meant that we knew that weekend we're all going to go pick purple hull peas.
I can remember so well, during pea season, we would go out and pick 10 and 15 bushels of peas. No, we didn't leave them on the floor until tomorrow. We stayed up to 10, 11 o'clock at night shelling peas. And when we got done, our thumbs was almost blue.
So purple hull peas is like a family thing. You know, you pick them as a family, you eat them as a family, you shell them as a family. You're telling stories through all of those exercises.
And those family stories heard during harvest took root in Lareatha's young mind. She cultivated a lifelong love of history, serving on preservation boards in Orlando, Dallas, and even the Texas Historical Commission.
And most important of all, I'm a founding board member of the Shankleville Historical Society. And my mother always had a real interest in the history, and most of the documentation we have to this day about Shankleville is stuff that my mother pulled together. It wasn't just a story, it was more than that, it was real history.
Lareatha and Phillip share those family stories, both with each other and with the broader picture of African American history. You see, they are both descendants of Jim and Winnie Shankle, former slaves whose harrowing love story shows just what it took to begin lives of freedom.
They were enslaved in Mississippi, and Winnie was sold to a Texan. She ended up here in this area.
Apparently, Jim was so fascinated with Winnie that he decided to just flee the slave camp. And he had to get across the Mississippi River. He had to get across Sabine River. And so we have to assume that he swam those two rivers. There's a spring that Winnie was fetching water for the camp, and she heard the little signal, the little sound that they had back in Mississippi on the slave camp. And so she looked around, and sure enough, there was Jim.
This was a love story.
Yes, it is. That's what this community was built on, and that's why I am so very proud of it.
That very spring where Jim and Winnie reunited still runs today, and it sits just a few hundred yards from the historic Odom Homestead, also known as the grounds of the Purple Hull Pea Festival. To Lareatha, this is just Grandma's house, but to festival goers, it's a restored example of the communities created after slavery ended.
The reason that we have all the information, we have the tours and the tours of the cemetery and the tours to the spring and the tours of the house and all that, is to connect that history to the community and then have fun on top of it. This is A.T. and Addie Odom, and this is where half my ashes will go, right in there.
Right between them.
Right between them.
Your grandparents.
Right.
Shankleville is one of the oldest, one of the first freedom colonies after the emancipation.
Freedom colonies in general, especially those in rural areas, were You know, they were pretty self-sufficient. They had their own churches, their schools, businesses. You know, people traded amongst themselves.
Rural, isolated, and free, Shankleville thrived in all the ways that truly matter in life. It never grew very big or got very rich, but this handful of farms and churches now gives families a warm home. And generations later, Phillip still appreciates the tiny community forged by all of his ancestors' determination.
My father, Anderson White, back in 1991, he was the first African American on the school board. And he told me many of stories about he had to go to school board meetings armed. And I admired him for being able to persevere through all those challenges. We only know bits and pieces of what they had to endure back in those oppression times. I'm sure that they were great-great and great-great-great-grandkids are still proud of what they did and the heartaches and the blood, sweat, and tears that they had to give up to make sure we had a nice, comfortable country place to live.
Thank you.
All too often, we look at history as cold, hard facts stamped into a metal marker. But Lareatha Clay and Phillip White see history in the faces of their kinfolk. And when the whole community gathers under the warm June sun, they honor each and every person who has ever felt at home in Shankleville.
There is more to preservation than that big guy's house, or the doctor's house, or the mayor's house. That the guy who did the work in the mill, his house is just as important, if not more so, because they were the ones that made the town. They were the ones that kept it going. That's what this is a celebration of.
Lareatha and myself are trying to keep the dream going. We are really excited about it, and it's really getting larger. I guess it's a response to whether or not the question that we always have in our hearts, are we continuing to display the love that our foreparents showed in Shankleville, Texas?